we do have an actual title for the Skinwalker film. It's
Yeah.
called The Shape of Shadows. So
Cool.
that's going to be the name of that.
So the Skinwalker film, you went out.
To Skinwalker Ranch. So
You were at Skinwalker Ranch.
So we were actually at a ranch that butts up next to Skinwalker Ranch. So we're on that property.
Uintah Basin.
Yep. We were right in the Uintah Basin area. There's a property that there's a guy that believes in all this stuff, has seen so much of that stuff. He bought the property
Sure.
next to Skinwalker Ranch, because that's the one thing people get it twisted. They think that everything just happens on Skinwalker Ranch. It's that whole area.
It's the whole basin,
it's wild.
Yeah.
And this is really funny. The guy that bought it, the reason why he bought it, the previous owner, was outside and it was getting dark one night and 3 dogmen jumped over a fence and started coming at him, and he was shooting his gun at them and it was just going through them.
Again, those bulletproof dogmen stories out there.
Yeah, he literally sold the ranch the next day after that.
Dude, Skinwalker Ranch, ever since I've heard of it and it crossed my ears.
Years ago. George Knapp.
I perk up like a wild dingo when I hear it, because I'm like, I think that's one of the places that if there is something wild going on, it's got everything to have that wildness going on.
It's
right?
got everything.
Like, yeah. It's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind setting. If you could move Devil's Tower to there.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's so many stories of. There's a really wild story that I don't remember what podcast I was even listening to. And the guy was like, I picked up a hitchhiker. And that turned out to be a skinwalker. And the police next day, they find this guy in his car.
It's
and he's
Ryan
just
Burns. That's the guy that owns the property that
is
we're
the
on.
guy.
Yeah. So he owns the ranch that butts up next to it.
That's okay.
So that's Ryan.
what I thought it was when you said it, but I wasn't sure. But I heard his story on, it might have been Monsters Among Us with Derek Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that story and I thought, man, that is so wild. But then he had other stories of skinwalkers in like Florida where there was a police officer. They would, travel these roads and they were getting calls about somebody being on this property. And so the rookie goes down and picks up this hitchhiker and then he tells all his other cop buddies and they're like, you did what? And they're like, don't ever pick them up again. They're like, we know about it. It's a very well-known phenomenon.
Right. It's known there big time.
And they're like, just don't pick them up. And this guy's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, when you're first kind of approaching a subject that you've never known about, right? You find out that everybody's already in the room throwing this party and they've been in there for a while.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? How did I not know about this?
Right.
And that's what we keep finding out, I think, through this show is just we're like, didn't know that one. I did not know that one. Like, I thought I knew a lot, or at least, had a broad.
Never heard of sky creatures in my life.
Justin really kind of opened us up to the sky creature stuff because that's kind of his really passion right there. He's a passionate sky man. To the Uintah Basin stuff, one thing we wanted to do with this film that's very going to be vastly different from any of the other films and anything else that's out there about anything Skinwalker related. We want to do it from the perspective of Native Americans, which nobody's doing.
Yeah,
this is where the lore started. It's been around for hundreds and thousands of years. So why would you not go to the people?
Get that side of it.
But they never do. Anytime you see anything like
it's hard to get in those areas though.
What's really wild is though when you talk about the guys that are down there on Skinwalker Ranch and doing what God knows what over there, anytime they do whatever documentaries that come out of there, they'll every now and then have a Native American on there, but it's more of like a joke. It's say like it's paranormal stupidness, whatever. It's never to actually get their side of it and come from that angle. Yeah. And that's something we want to do. And shockingly enough, because we came in there with that attitude, the Native Americans there were so open to working with us.
That's awesome.
And taking us around all over the place.
That's awesome.
Which was really cool. We had one guy, Johnny, he was amazing. He lived there a long time, but he's also traveled the world. And he took us to a lot of hot spots around there where there's all kind of things. They got these things called water babies, and they literally are like, they look like babies and they float and swim around in the water, and they got these sharp like piranha teeth. And he said you can hear them wailing around like.
What is this? This is a real creature?
Yes. So he told us the story of the water babies, and he said that at night you can literally hear them around around dusk, you'll hear them wailing out there. He took us to the rivers where they're at, and he's like, you got to be careful too. He's like, they'll come up out of the water. He told us a story about his great-grandfather was out there as a kid, and he was digging around in like the sand, and he dug up this water baby, and it popped up and tried to attack him, and his grandmother came in and kind of kicked it, and it ran back in the water. He said, but you can see them float. If you're out on the river, you'll see them floating up out of the water, and they just look crazy, and they'll wail, and they're like a whole creature out there. Yeah, it's just...
So are they like ethereal? If they're floating, are they like physical?
They're physical. He said they're actually physical. He said they obviously have some sort of, they can breathe in water. So there's obviously some sort of maybe gill system that they have. He said, but they're not like... They're
water baby.
They're called water babies, which is
mind just
really
got
wild.
Blown, bro.
Let's say, what time is it? We're not done already, are we? Jesus.
9/11.
Good grief.
Yeah, that was just one of the
Water
crazy
babies.
things that go on there. He told us about it's like the Skinwalker tales. There's so many different kinds of Skinwalker.
Right. That's
because
true.
the story is that these people do these rituals to be able to shapeshift.
Yeah.
Right.
And they kind of gravitate to one thing they like to shapeshift into. So what's really crazy is he said there's this one thing that's out. He took us to this river where all these mesas were at, and it's so wild. This is where the water babies were at too. But he said there's this hoofed 2-foot, or 2-legged, almost like a
Mr. Tumnus?
sort of like that roams that area,
Cherub.
but a lot more vicious than Mr. Tumnus from Lion Witch of the Wardrobe. So, yeah, he said that exists out in that area too, and he's just talking about this so matter of fact.
Just hey,
that everyone in the area knows this
is.
stuff.
This
That's
is life
just the
out here. This is life out
That's the
here.
kind of stuff that gives you chills. When people are like, you're like, oh yeah, and they're like, no.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to get into a long story about it. It just is what it is.
And I mean, and who are you to tell them that
Right.
what they're seeing and what their belief is?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe they're seeing something for sure.
Yes.
I mean, and the water babies thing is not unheard of in that area. But we interviewed so many people, so many natives, and they all had just wildest stories about UFOs, about things landing, taking people off. You had just all kinds of just cryptid stuff going on there too. I mean, it's just wild. And some of it I won't talk about here because it'll be on the film. But man, just some of the stuff that we heard. And listen, I'm balls deep in the high strangeness, so like I'm ready to believe it all. It's funny because I do Kill the Mockingbirds with Sean. Sean's a little more level-headed than me because he's very like geopolitical, like comparative to me. Like even though I'm very geopolitical too, he's very geopolitical. He'll break it down a million different ways. He likes to do it in a way that the average person can understand. So he's like, "Hey, we got these guys with a lot of money. You don't think they don't rub elbows with the other guys that have money?
Right.
You don't think that they might do some things that are shady to attain more
get
money?
more money and
He'll do
power.
it in a way that makes sense to people.
Right.
Where I'm just like, they're reptilians, man. They're coming for us right now. This is what's going down. You know what I mean? So like me, I'm coming like all out with it, especially on the show.
Right.
Now, if I'm talking to the average person on the street, I'm gonna schmooze them way more. You know, I'm not gonna hit them with like portal babies off the rip. Like I'm not coming with that level. Yeah.
Yes. Portal babies. Hashtag we gotta make that a thing.
I love it.
Maybe that should be our wow.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it's one of those things too, and I've said it a couple of times in different episodes. As you get a little bit older, I don't know how old you are, but you know, we've been around this block for a long time. Of the first time you start to really go, yeah, I think there's UFOs, and you start shouting into the rooftops, everybody, and people are like not that interested. You're like, I'm just not going to tell you then because it's not really worth me trying to knock down your door if you don't care. But once you start getting into the groups of people where you can discuss it and you can have these conversations, that's when I kind of feel it fire back up because I won't say it's dormant, but I don't go around trying to tell anybody anymore because I'm just like, you can figure it out on your own. If you start talking about it, I'll chime in, but I am done trying to like convince anybody.
I think too what's happened, and especially since 2020, I think like a whole new like spiritual world's opened up for a lot of people that didn't know that existed.
Sure.
I think they're very open. You know, I read an article the other day. They said like from millennials down to the generations coming up that there is such a small fraction of people that are actually atheists anymore. Like it's such a small fraction because people just know there's just a bigger world out there than what that they were told, right? So it's just so much more to it.
Yeah.
And I'm here to preach about how I feel about it today. But yeah, I think there is a definite spiritual tone. I think there's a spiritual warfare going on out in the world right now, especially when you come to these elites and these bloodlines and these things that I'm not going to get you banned for today. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Bring it on. The wiki's calling. Let's go.